Welcome back to a consideration for the gospel reading for November 21st from John 18:33 through 37 and a bit of 38. If you're willing, please put me on pause and go to the video where I read my dynamic and free translation of this passage. That'll make what I'm about to say a lot clearer. Thanks for the gift of your time. There's a lot to say about this passage. You know, it's impossible to read these dramatic passages from John without realizing that there is a deep use of irony. And in this passage, Pilate is clearly the ironic victim of Jesus and of the creator of this story. There's nothing realistic about this whole encounter with Pilate in scene after scene after scene. It's all powered by Johannine irony. That means there's nothing on the surface. All is to be revealed is at that deeper ironic level. It's highly stylized. If you just would take a Bible and clearly mark where Pilate goes in and out and in and out and in and out again and again and again, it looks almost like a puppet on a string. That's to convey exactly the sense that it's Pilate who is really on trial here. But the trial is also subtly Pilate as the seeker. This only becomes clear if you watch the progression of what happens between Jesus and Pilate. For instance, as we get near the end, Pilate is thrown into deep distress when he casually says to Jesus, no, he said, don't you understand that I have the power of life and death over you? And Jesus replies, you would have no power unless it were given to you, and here's that subtle term from John, above, the other realm. And then, almost like an epilogue, when Pilate arranges this three-language statement on Jesus as he hangs on the cross. And they come to him and say, don't put that up there. Say, you have to add, he claimed to be this kind of sovereign or king. And Pilate makes this remarkably terse response. 3 words as it comes out in Greek. What I have written. Almost in their face. If that weren't enough, he becomes a kind of a triad of decedent care. Nicodemus reappears for the 3rd time, and then traditional Joseph and Pilate, the 3 of them arranging for a proper burial. And we're left with that typical Johannine sense of him as a successive speaker. We don't know the outcome. Whereas in other scenes like this, the man born blind, the woman at the Samaritan well, progression, seeking, asking questions, and finally the light dawns, but we don't know if it dawns in Pilate. It's left open. And by the way, also left open for Nicodemus. That's the wonder of the Johannine arrangement of this. Now, within the reading for November 21st, we have the theme of sovereignty. And the reason I translate sovereign instead, obviously, of king, is because it is more elastic in terms of what is at stake here. Now, behind that term, as is true in much of John's use of images, is solid Old Testament Hebraic understanding. I'm thinking now of the way the benedictions always begin in Judaism. Baruch bara Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. That melech is sovereign or king, haolam of everything. So all the prayers began. Sovereign of the cosmos, king of the universe. And that's what's at stake here. Pilate understands sovereignty. He's a part of a huge system of sovereignty and a puppet of it. He's being confronted by another realm with another sovereign. And it is in this back and forth that it becomes plain that he is beginning to recognize that this sense of authority, of dignity, in which Jesus should be appearing as a victim but becomes rather the one posing questions of Pilate. And as this progresses, one gets the sense that Pilate is vaguely aware there's something different going on here. Now, all the readings for this week are about kingship, okay? And it's perfectly reasonable in terms of being the end of this particular year or cycle of the liturgical readings. But I hope you'll deal with John. I hope you'll deal with the fact that John clearly says there are two calls. This comes out grammatically when Pilate goes back into Praetorium and calls, I'm reflecting here the Greek word, to have Jesus brought before him. And at the very end of this interview, Jesus says, those who are part of the realm of truth hear the call of truth. So there are two calls constantly. And John is saying, Jesus constantly reminds the world that God has visited in a particular way to make it possible to respond to a different universe with a different sovereign and live that way here on earth. Well, thanks for listening, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week.